You tell yourself you're afraid of failing. That's the story. That's the one you repeat when someone asks why you haven't started yet. But watch what actually happens when things start going well. Watch what you do the moment something real begins to take shape. You slow down. You find a reason to hesitate. You suddenly need more time, more research, more preparation. The project was moving. You stopped it. Not because it was failing, but because it wasn't. That's worth sitting with for a moment. Most people who call themselves afraid of failure are actually doing fine at tolerating failure. They've failed before, they recovered. They're still here, scrolling, thinking, planning the next attempt. What they can't tolerate is what comes after success starts to feel possible. There's a specific kind of discomfort that arrives when something is actually working. Not the anxiety of trying, the anxiety of becoming someone who succeeds at this particular thing. You've carried an image of yourself for a long time. Quiet, struggling, almost there, not quite. That image has structure. It explains your past. It justifies your present. It protects you from certain expectations. If you succeed, that image breaks, and you don't fully know who's on the other side. So the mind finds ways to interrupt the process before the image has to update. Suddenly you're exhausted. Suddenly the goal feels hollow. Suddenly you're not sure this is even what you want. None of those feelings are false, but they're also perfectly timed to appear the moment real momentum shows up. That's not coincidence. That's a system working exactly as designed. The design is protection. The cost is your ceiling. Think about the last time you got close. Not almost failed close, actually working close. Something was happening, people were responding, the numbers moved, the skill was showing. And then something shifted in you, quietly, almost invisibly. You started checking more, second-guessing the thing that was already working. You introduced doubt into a process that hadn't asked for it yet. Maybe you told yourself you were being careful, realistic, grounded, not getting ahead of yourself. But underneath that was something older, something that didn't trust what was happening. Something that knew if this kept going, you'd have to become a different version of yourself. And that version, the one who actually operates at a higher level, felt unfamiliar in a way that registered as dangerous. Identity doesn't update automatically. It resists. When you've spent years defining yourself as someone who struggles, someone who tries but hasn't quite made it, success doesn't feel like relief. It feels like a threat to the story you've been living inside. That story has done real work for you. It's managed expectations, yours and everyone else's. If you've never fully committed, you've never fully lost. The gap between potential and performance stays yours to protect. You can always say, I haven't really tried yet. That's still available as an exit. Full commitment removes that exit. And some part of you knows that. So the pattern isn't avoidance of failure. It's avoidance of the version of yourself that can no longer claim smallness. That might sound strange, but smallness has been useful. It kept certain people comfortable around you. It kept certain relationships balanced. It kept you from having to hold the weight of your own capability every single day. Potential, when left unrealized, stays theoretical. Theoretical things can't disappoint anyone. But the moment you begin moving toward it in a real invisible way, it becomes something you can lose. And that is when the fear arrives, not before. Right then. You've probably mistaken this fear for laziness before. You looked at the unfinished project, the abandoned routine, the idea you never launched, and decided you just didn't want it badly enough. But wanting wasn't the problem. You wanted it. You still do. The problem is that wanting something and allowing yourself to fully become the person who has it are two completely different acts. One is safe. The other requires you to change in ways you can't fully predict or control. And the mind treats unpredictable change the same way it treats physical danger. It tries to stop you, not with loud resistance, with quiet ones, fog, fatigue, sudden disinterest, a new distraction that feels completely justified. You pick up your phone. You reorganize something that didn't need reorganizing. You start a conversation that pulls you sideways. None of it feels like sabotage while it's happening. It feels like just living. But the pattern only appears on certain days. The days when the work was about to become real. There's also something worth naming about what success would demand socially. Some of your relationships are built on a shared understanding of where everyone stands. If you move, that understanding shifts. Some people won't say anything, but something will change in the room. You've felt that before, maybe. The quiet distance when you did something well. The slightly flat response. The subject change. The compliment with just enough weight removed from it. You learned early that staying smaller kept the temperature comfortable. So part of what you're protecting isn't just your own identity. It's the social ecosystem you've learned to survive inside. Potential threatens that ecosystem. Realizing it means renegotiating relationships you didn't know had contracts. That's not weakness. That's just how social systems work when someone inside them starts to change. But here's what the pattern costs. Because it does cost something. Every time you interrupt momentum to protect the old image, the gap between who you are and what you're capable of gets a little harder to close. Not because the capability disappears, but because the habit of stopping it gets stronger. The mind gets better at what it practices. If it practices interrupting potential, it gets efficient at exactly that. And after enough cycles, you stop noticing the interruption as a choice. It just starts feeling like who you are. That's the quiet damage, not the big failures. The small, practiced retreats from the edge of something real. There's a misconception worth correcting here. Most people assume the fix is more confidence. Build your self-esteem. Believe in yourself more. Visualize the outcome. But the fear of potential isn't primarily a confidence problem. It's an identity problem. You don't need to feel more worthy of success. You need to let the image of yourself update slowly alongside the work. That means staying in the work even when it starts producing results you're not used to holding. Letting people respond to you differently without immediately dismantling what caused it. Sitting with the discomfort of becoming someone your past self wouldn't fully recognize. And not running. It doesn't happen in one decision. It happens in the smaller ones. The moment you keep going, instead of finding a reason to pause. The moment you don't water down the thing that was working. The moment you let the version that's emerging take up a little more space. If any of this is something you're navigating personally, please consider speaking with a qualified professional. This is reflection, not a replacement for real support. What you've been calling fear of failure might be something more specific. It might be fear of the life that starts on the other side of actually trying. Fear of who you'd have to become, what you'd have to carry, and what you could no longer pretend wasn't possible. That's not a small fear. It makes complete sense that you've been avoiding it. But it has been avoiding you back, quietly, in every project that stalled just before it mattered. The question isn't whether you're capable. You already know that answer, which is part of why this is so uncomfortable. The question is whether you'll let yourself be someone who acts like it.